What's happening, everybody? It's Sean with Reactions to the Classics, and today we have a traveling Wilburys reaction for our friend, longtime supporter, and patron of the channel, Evan David. Thank you, Evan David, for everything you bring. Thanks to all the patrons. If you guys support us in a way, check out our Patreon link below or the Patreon link on the end screen. So if you've watched one of these before with Evan David, you know it's going to be a great background on the band and the album. And I really needed it on this because I knew who the Traveling Wilburys were, but I didn't know anything about them. So we're going to be covering their first album, the album, really, from them. They have a second one, but this is the one that's thought of being the classic, Traveling Wilburys, Volume 1. Yes, they didn't think a lot about the title. You don't need to. So here it goes. Evan David says, rock and roll legend has it, there came a day unlike any other, when five of Earth's mightiest musicians came together to create groovier tunes than any single rock star could perform. And so the Traveling Wilburys were born. Stan Lee style hyperbole aside, however, the lineup of the group that would become the Traveling Wilburys in mid-1988 certainly reads like the musical equivalent of an all-star comic book superhero team like the Justice League or the Avengers, consisting as it did of some of the most truly legendary figures in rock and roll at that point in time, including the world's most renowned songwriter, Bob Dylan, aka Lucky Wilbury, arguably the world's most renowned vocalist, Roy Orbison, aka Lefty Wilbury, ex-ELO mastermind Jeff Lynne, a.k.a. Otis Wilbury, ex-head honcho of the Heartbreakers Tom Petty, a.k.a. Charlie T. Wilbury Jr., and above all, the main ringleader of the group, no less a figure than ex-Beatle George Harrison, a.k.a. Nelson Wilbury. Small wonder then at least one executive in one of the Wilburys' parent publishing companies, when he heard of the group's formation, was allegedly heard to remark, "Who am I to get in the way of history?" As such, while the Traveling Wilburys may have been relatively short-lived as an actual working band, releasing only 2 albums during their 3-year active lifetime, the sheer combined musical prowess of those involved in the band, especially with the main roster being bolstered still further by the presence of other key supporting personnel, such as ace session drummer Jim Keltner, aka Buster Sideberry, to boot, was certainly formidable enough to make a considerable impact on both critics and the record-buying public alike. Indeed, the album which forms the subject of this review, namely the Traveling Wilburys Volume 1, would end up being nominated for the Grammy Award for Album of the Year in 1989/90, and actually won the Grammy for Best Rock Performance by a Duo or Group in the same year, and has since been certified as triple platinum seller in the US alone, where it eventually reached number 3, and only reached 16 in the UK, but it did get platinum with over sales of 300,000 in that country as well. Despite all these illustrious trappings of transatlantic critical and commercial success, however, the actual circumstances which had first led to the formation of the Traveling Wilburys were perhaps surprisingly prosaic, with the first seeds being planted in a drunken dinner conversation between Harrison and then producer Lynne in January of '87, while they were working on George Harrison's comeback album, Cloud 9. As Lynne himself later put it, "When we used to hang out every night after the sessions and listen back to what we had done in the daytime, and George had this idea. He said to me, 'You know what? Me and you should have a group.' And I said, 'Wow, that's a good idea. What a smashing thing. Who do we have in it?' And he said, 'Well, how about Bob Dylan?' I said, 'That's a good idea. How about Roy Orbison?' He said, 'Yeah, that's a good idea.' And I thought, 'Wow, what about Tom?' Well, such fanciful conversations, perhaps the idle musician's equivalent of fantasy football, may under other circumstances have simply remained the stuff of rock and roll dreams were made of. However, the fact remains that the prospective members of this still imaginary friendly neighborhood supergroup already knew and moreover admired each other well enough that the necessary personal and artistic networks were already in place that would allow the Wilburys to spontaneously emerge seemingly from nowhere a few months later, when Harrison needed both a guitar and a studio to work on a new B-side for his upcoming single. As Harrison himself described in April of 1988, "I had dinner with Roy Orbison and Jeff Lynne. I said to Jeff, 'Look, tomorrow I'm going to go in the studio and make up a tune. Do you want to come and help me?' And he said, 'Sure.' Bob, we knew, had this little studio, and I phoned Bob up. Sometimes you can phone him and not get through for years, but he picked up on the first ring. Remember, boys and girls, we don't have cell phones in. And said, 'Come on over.' My guitar was at Tom Petty's house, so Tom and Jeff picked me up, and we went over to Bob's. I got the first line, and then wham, the others just kept coming up with all these lines. And then Bob was saying, 'What's it called? What's it about?' And I finally saw behind his door a big box with a sticker on it saying, 'Handle with care.' I said, 'Handle with care.' He said, 'Oh, good, yeah.' After the resulting tune was later played to the heads of Harrison's then record label Warner Brothers, the delighted executives insisted it was far too good to be relegated to a mere B-side, and it should instead be the first song from George's new group. A conclusion which certainly jibed with Harrison's own thought process on the matter. For as he again put it, 'I liked the song and the way it had turned out with all these people on it so much that the only thing I could think of to do was make another 9, make an album.' Bob had to go on the road at the end of May, and we had 9 or 10 days we knew we could get Bob for, and everybody else was relatively free. So we just said, let's do it. We'll just write a tune a day and do it that way. It was very exciting, but apart from that, there was no other plan. We walked in and started writing the tunes. And so the Traveling Wilburys were truly born with their slightly outlandish band name hailing from an earlier snarky comment from George that if any mistakes occurred while recording, quote, we'll bury him in the mix, aptly befitting a group whose mutual bonds seemingly owed as much to a shared love of surreal Monty Python-esque humor as to any sense of musical camaraderie. I did not know how that, I've always wondered how they were named. By all accounts, this vision of a band based on mutual camaraderie, as much as if not more than anything else, had been one of George's main criteria when first conceiving the Wilbury idea, with prospective members being selected in large part based upon how much fun they'd be to hang around with as friends, and this somewhat bohemian approach, no doubt informed in large part by his previous experience of group dynamics as part of the Fab Four, both good and bad, certainly paid off in spades in this case. After all, as Tom Petty would later put it, the whole Wilbury experience was some of the best days of my life, really, and I think it probably was for us all. The thing I guess would be hardest for people to understand is what good friends we were. It really had very little to do with combining a bunch of famous people. It was a bunch of friends that just happened to be really good at making music. And I'll pause for, I just think that's probably it, right? No one else can relate to you, but you can relate. You got a group of guys that can all relate to each other and the fame and the pressures and everything that was like. So on to Evan David's writer. Nevertheless, this apparent lack of formality and pretension in no way belies the equally simple fact that the Wilburys were in many ways, if you'll forgive another comic book allusion, truly the very best there was at what they did. And that process of recording the album would thus reflect their status as a well-knit, but still very much all-star team of consummate music professionals. As George's then-wife, Olivia Harrison, put it years later, they had a lot of fun, but they didn't goof around. It wasn't just one big party. They were working. Indeed, as is the case with many of the most accomplished sports teams, for example, the fact that the Wilburys recording process could be so seemingly simple and straightforward, and yet still so very successful musically, was in no doubt due in part to the fact that the individual talents involved were so stratospherically high level. After all, to quote Jeff Lynne, one of the most amazing things ever about the Wilburys was this poles apart thing of Roy Orbison and Bob Dylan, the best singer and the best lyricist, and they're both in the same group, that once they gelled together, they could produce something special, seemingly almost without trying. This impression of relaxed, everyday geniuses at play during the Wilbury sessions is perhaps best summed up by Jeff Lynne once again, who described the Wilburys' daily recording routine as follows. Quote, we were just sitting around in a circle, the 5 of us strumming acoustic guitars and coming up with a song in like a couple of hours. It was almost ready to record, and then recording it like on the evening. It's pretty sort of unbelievable stuff. We'd finish around midnight and just sit for a bit while Roy would tell us fabulous stories about Sun Records or hanging out with Elvis. Then we'd come back the next day to work on another one. That's why the songs are so good and fresh, because they haven't been second-guessed and dissected and replaced. It's so tempting to add stuff to a song when you've got unlimited time. Sadly, time would soon prove to be far from unlimited for one Wilbury in particular, as the added strain of extra promotional duties following the Traveling Wilburys album's eventual release in October of '98, coupled with his own still ongoing solo touring and recording career, see our Mystery Girl review up on the channel that Evan David brought. It's fantastic. Would ultimately take a fatal toll on Roy Orbison, who died of a massive heart attack on the 6th of December 1988 at the far too young age of 52. Poignantly, Orbison himself had clearly cherished his all-too-brief stint as a traveling Wilbury. For as Tom Petty later recalled, quote, Roy went out on top, and I'm sure he knew that. The last conversation I had with him was a couple days before he died, and he was just so thrilled that the Wilburys had gone platinum, and he was just, isn't it great? It's great. We all felt that Roy was a special part of the group, and it was just our ace in the hole to have that voice come in. And he was so nice, and it was so painful when he died. Evan David says, even more poignantly, perhaps, Orbison himself had once proclaimed that the Wilburys did it all for music. There wasn't a lot of deciding what to do, not a lot of time spent planning out anything. We just wrote the best songs we could and sang them as best we could. I put all I had into that project. It was wonderful to see all these professionals just do their thing. And I would say it was a learning experience for me. The doing of the album, that was my greatest time. That's what Roy said. Orbison's death did not, in fact, signal the end of the Traveling Wilburys concept as a whole, however, with the surviving members reconvening to record a second Wilburys album in March of 1990, which was in turn released in October of that year, having been deliberately titled Traveling Wilburys Volume 3 as a joke. I always wondered that, man. Beforehand, there had apparently been rumors of either Del Shannon or ex-Bird Roger McGuinn officially replacing Orbison as a Wilbury, but these came to nothing. Perhaps unsurprisingly, however, the second Wilburys album, while still a very fun and enjoyable piece of work indeed, did not do quite as well as his predecessor had overall, peaking at 14 in the UK and 11 in the US, where it too was certified platinum. Whether this relative, quote, decline can be traced to the loss of Orbison's input or simply to no longer having quite the same overwhelming sense of serendipity behind it, however, the fact remained there would be no follow-up to Volume 3 under the Wilburys name, which was perhaps for the best in terms of avoiding the prospect of any further feeling of diminishing returns coming through. For as Jeff Lynne once put it, you can never capture the sheer enjoyment we all got from the Wilburys, the fun of it all, the freedom from pressure. Then there was a sheer surprise in what we did. Nobody expected it. If we were to do it again, I think we'd have to do something quite different musically. And I think even in those 2 years from 88 to 90, right, the music soundscape was very much changing, so that probably went to it too. Evan David says, still, the Traveling Wilburys as an idea continued to exert a certain magic over both its former members as well as the wider public, with George Harrison himself admitting at one point that, quote, I've always played around in my own mind what a Wilburys tour could do. Would each person do a solo set and then do Wilburys at the end? Or would we all go right on from beginning to end and make everything Wilburys? It's an intriguing thought. We could have a great band up in there and the four of us could play acoustical if we wanted to. We could all sing Blowing in the Wind and Bob could sing something. Or we could just sing our individual songs and make them Wilbury tunes as if we recorded them that way. Whatever it was, we could do it. Sadly, this time, the tantalizing project of a live Traveling Wilburys experience simply never went beyond Harrison's idle speculations, which again may or may not have been for the best. After all, the quote Tom Petty quote, I think it would work if we wanted to do it. I don't think we ever considered it really. There were a lot of nights when the conversation would roll around to that, but I don't think anybody ever took it seriously. I think it would ruin it in a way. Then you'd feel obligated to be responsible. It's not the character of that group. It would have made it very formal, and that would be the wrong spirit. Instead, the former Wilburys simply all returned to their respective individual solo careers with interest in the group, nonetheless resurfacing on several occasions upon reaching historical milestones, both sad, like the deaths of Harrison in 01 and Petty in 17, and happy, like the reissuing of both Wilbury albums as a deluxe 2-CD box set in 2007, whereupon it reached number 1 in the UK and elsewhere and 9 in the US. Ongoing chart success notwithstanding, however, the ultimate legacy of the Traveling Wilburys can surely be found in the sheer sense of fun and joy that once again the Wilburys wanted to make something good in a world that seemed to get uglier and meaner, and I'm really proud that I was a part of it because I do think that it brought a little sunshine into the world. That's what Petty said. I, for one, heartily agree and am very much looking forward to seeing what you guys and the rest of the RTTC community make of this album. For now, however, the final word on the Traveling Wilburys should probably go to George Harrison himself, who once said that, quote, the thing about the Wilburys for me is if we'd tried to plan that, or if anyone had tried to say, let's form this band and get these people in it, it would have never happened. It's impossible. And the thing happened completely just by magic, just by circumstance. Maybe there was a full moon that night or something like that, and it was quite a magical thing, really. So we're going to kick this list off with the first track, Handle with Care. Went to 21 in the UK, 45 in the US. The magical feeling of infinite possibilities and collective joy that this song's irresistible combination of the Wilburys' individual vocal turns melding into glorious harmonies evokes is perhaps best captured by its official video, which we're going to watch, boys and girls, which depicts the bands almost as the wandering musical equivalent of the A-Team as they turn up on the scene in a custom van, no less, do their thing with consummate skill, then leave as quickly as they can. Little surprise then that it's a perfect tune to kick off this album for me, Evan David says, as well as being perhaps my favorite Wilburys tune, full stop. All right, Handle with Care. It's a very simple video. I don't think I've ever seen this video. We're going to watch one more video for the very last song. I have seen that video back in the day because I watched MTV all the time. But I mean, I only knew that the one song off this album from the Wilburys and barely, you know, in 1988, when I was 17 years old or 16 years old when this hit, I would not have appreciated this and didn't really at the time. But now seeing all those legends up there, just fantastic. And, you know, just talking about the things that he's gone through, that Harrison has gone through. And, you know, they showed pictures of the guys and at certain key moments in the song. So instrumentation, fantastic. Arrangement, fantastic. But like I said, seeing them all up there, because there is no live performance of them, obviously, because Roy passed away and they never had that opportunity, even if they would have decided to even perform on a TV show or whatever. It just never happened. So really fun to see that one. Now we'll head on over to Spotify for most of the rest of this list. You see it below. We got Dirty World. Evan David says Roy Orbison's widow Barbara once said that, quote, the basis of the Wilbury record was lots of laughter and just lots of fun and incredible creativity. And the creation of this decidedly tongue-in-cheek tune remains perhaps the most absurdly enjoyable example captured either on record or on film of that collective Wilburys experience, those were Evan David's words. As George Harrison described it, quote, I love that track. I don't know how other people write songs, but I just picked up a bunch of Autosport magazines, gave everybody some copies, and they just started reading out things like 5-speed gearbox, stuff like that. We just wrote this random list and had it on the microphone, and then we just did the take. All right. Dirty World just kind of shows you, like, it's whatever you read into something, right? He is just singing. It's Dylan singing all of it. The chorus is Petty. At the very end of the outro, George says, dirty world, dirty world. It's an ing, dirty world. It's an ing, so it's buried in the mix. So you're just, but what word are you putting in there? We know what you're putting in there. I'm not going to say it, but it just shows you, like, the words don't mean anything. It's how your mind, wherever your mind takes it. But Dylan's just kind of talking about that. Good instrumentation and a good arrangement, obviously, but just a cleverly little written song. Now we'll go to the third track. You see it below, Rattled. Evan David says, a song in the best Chuck Berry tradition, this bouncy old school rocker of a tune. It's also a showcase for some of the more unusual drumming talents of Wilburys percussionist Jim Keltner. For as the song's lead singer, Jeff Lynne, put it, Jim started playing the shells and it sounded great. It sounded just like old springs. It suited the track really well. Nothing was off limits. You could record where you like, so it was an opportunity to get sounds you'd never have got before. As you were doing it, you already felt that you were listening to the finished product, and it sounded great. George Harrison, meanwhile, remarked the quote, the sound of it, I think, it was just so close to the good old rock and roll thing from the late 50s, but that partially is, I think, the guitars, the acoustic, and the fridge. You know, it had to be a bit rough, but that was the fun about it. It's the most basic of rock and roll sounds. Rattle, definitely a 50s style there. Jeff Lynne, fantastic job on the lead vocals. Tom Petty playing the bass on here, doing a really good job, especially at about the 2-minute mark when you're about 2/3 of the way through the song. Jim Keltner's drums were fantastic. Electric guitars, Harrison and Lynne, but slide guitar, Harrison. Just a really good song. I mean, you know, it's written in the vein of a 50s song, right? There's not a ton to the lyrics. Just every time he meets this girl, he gets rattled, right? Won't she just be with him one time, right? He's getting rattled, man. We've all kind of been there at one time or another, I would imagine. Now we go to the tune Last Night. Evan David said, one of the most irresistibly fun tunes on the whole Irresistibly Fun album for me. This breezy little tale of a seedy barroom encounter gone wrong also serves as a reggae-infused showcase for the contrasting lead vocal talents of Roy Orbison and Tom Petty. A perhaps unlikely partnership with nevertheless pays good dividends here. As Petty himself once put it, after all, quote, sometimes we sing the same song just to see who sounded good. That was a lot of fun, and George would kind of audition us, which would be really intimidating because Roy Orbison would sing the song and then they'd send you out to sing it. Damn, that's really intimidating. I can imagine, man. Last Night, I really liked the difference in the lead vocals there between Petty and Orbison, and a great story. I like the reggae, so it's actually my favorite song so far. And it basically just tells a story. Petty meets this girl. You know, he really likes her. They go up to the bedroom and she lowered the boom. Roy comes in and says, down below they danced and sang in the street while above the walls were steaming with heat. Petty comes up again, I was feeling no pain, feeling good in my brain. I looked in her eyes, they were full of surprise. Then Orbison comes in, I asked her to marry me. She smiled and pulled out a knife. The party's just beginning, she said, your money or your life. Now I'm back at the bar, she went a little too far, she done me wrong. All I got is this song, Last Night, thinking about last. Just a really fun song, and actually one of the best written songs on here so far, story-wise. Now you see it below, we got Not Alone Anymore. Evan David said, this powerfully poignant tune showcases two of the most significant musical assets the Traveling Wilburys ever had to offer, namely lead singer Roy Orbison's frankly unbeatable voice and Jeff Lynne's peerless production skills, which revitalized a track which on first recording didn't quite live up to his potential pedigree, as Petty later recalled. There's a Roy Orbison number on the first album called Not Alone Anymore. No one was happy with it, you know. I think we all thought, better write another song. Well, that's not good enough for Jeff Lynne. He came in the next day, stripped the song, he had the lead vocal and the drums, and he completely rewrote the song around this lead vocal that was there, and wrote this incredible song, you know, and now it's one of my favorite ones on the album. And there's nobody else that could do that. Not Alone Anymore. Roy just sounded fantastic here. I mean, if it was redone, Lynne's production on this is fantastic. You can kind of tell it's a little more refined than the other songs. So I can kind of see that. Maybe that's just bias because I know that now after what Evan David shared. But yeah, really did enjoy that one. I mean, the story is, you know, he kind of didn't appreciate the girl he's with. She walked away. And then once he figured it out she's not alone anymore. So he kind of blew it. So hopefully you've never been there, but I've been there before. Now we'll go to the back half of the album. We got Congratulations, a sarcastically bittersweet, if not plain bitter, ironic Bob Dylan-led compliment to a lost love, Evan David says. George Harrison described this song's creation as follows. We worked out the tune straight off together, but Bob basically had the idea for that. Congratulations. The difference was the rest of us had more time. But Bob had to go on the road, as we talked about earlier, and we knew he couldn't do any more vocals again, so we had to get his vocals immediately. Indeed, Evan David says, and despite, according to Rough Guide to Bob Dylan author Nigel Williamson, Dylan sounding like he was having more fun with the Wilburys than he'd done in years. Dylan was in fact about to embark on the first leg of what became his still ongoing, never-ending tour, with Harrison in turn musing as a result that, quote, if all the Wilburys did was help to get Bob enthusiastic again, then that's something. Congratulations. Dylan on here. This is probably the first song I can tell was kind of written quickly. I mean, it's not a bad song. It's just very basic. But that congratulations where they all come in and harmonize that, it's very catchy. He's just telling this girl, congratulations for breaking my heart, for tearing it apart. You finally did succeed, for leaving me in need. And he's basically just going through the song, lamenting that she's gone. And the next verse, congratulations for bringing me down. Now I'm sorrow bound. You got a good deal. How good you must feel. And then the last chorus, for making me wait. Now it's too late. You came in on top. You never did know when to stop. So this guy is in a bad way on there. Nice slide guitar by Harrison on here. Really stands out for me. Now, boys and girls, we're going to head for the light, right? Heading for the Light, which I would have guessed this when I saw the song title, but Evan David says, a Harrison-led hymn to spiritual redemption and regeneration, which is also released as a single in both the U.S. and Australia. This joyfully upbeat tune serves to remind us that, above all, the traveling Wilburys were George's chosen vehicle to lead himself, his friends, and anyone else who cared to listen out of the doldrums of darkness, and yes, into the light, so to speak. A sentiment later echoed by Tom Petty, who said, quote, what elated George the most about the Wilburys was that the idea was working. It was not only all the fun he wanted to have, it was coming out really good. None of this would have happened without him, you know. It was George's band. It was always George's band, and it was a dream he'd had for a long time. Heading for the Light. Great saxophone on there. It's not credited on the musicianship, but Harrison with a nice slide guitar as well. George's slide guitar is just so fantastic. This really sounded like a George Harrison song, right? In all the best ways. You could just feel him through it. I like the arrangement of it. I mean, the idea is to a higher power, right? And he's heading for the light, so everything's going to be okay through these hard roads that he's went down. But that has to go on my favorite list as well. Not trying to give that away, but I just thought that one was really, really well done. And it was all George, right? It felt like him totally. You did have in there on that first chorus, though, Lynne and Petty came in, and I thought that added a nice texture and difference to the song. Next up, we have Margarita, a synth pop infused, vaguely tropical sounding, mostly Dylan and Petty wet tune. This is another fun one with more harmonies than you can shake the proverbial stick at, Evan David says, and one that showcases the fact that while this album is itself mostly dominated by a sort of back to basics musical vibe, the Wilburys could also tap into the best of the 1988 musical zeitgeist as needed to boot. Yeah, I got to get them synths going in 88, right? Margarita. Probably the first one I felt like on here, really felt like on here, was kind of just a throw in, right? They had to have it. It didn't really work for me, but props to them for trying. I don't think the lyrics mean a whole lot. Once again, on all these songs, the instrumentation's fantastic. The acoustic's really good on this one. It's credited all 5 of them. So who really knows on that one? All right, we only got 2 tracks left. We got Tweeter and the Monkey Man. Heavily reminiscent, if not an out-and-out parody of Bruce Springsteen-style epic storytelling songs, Evan David says. And awestruck Harrison described his creation as, quote, it was really Tom Petty and Bob just sitting there in the kitchen, and for some reason Bob was talking about all this Americana stuff that didn't make much sense to me, and we got a tape cassette, put it on, and then transcribed everything they were saying. It was just fantastic watching him do it because he had one take, warming himself up, and on take 2, he sang it right through. And then what he did was he changed some of the lyrics, maybe in about 4 places. He changed a couple of lines and improved them, dropped those lines in, and that's it. The way he writes the words down, like very tiny, like a spider's written it. If you know, you can't hardly read it. And it's just unbelievable seeing how he did it. That for me was just amazing watching him. Now I found a little more on this song because if you guys watch this channel, you know Springsteen is my guy. But it says that this bears a strong resemblance to Lily, Rosemary, and the Jack of Hearts, which is on Dylan's fantastic 1975 Blood on the Tracks. Except for the constant Springsteen references. The chorus features the other Wilbury on backing vocals. With so many references to Springsteen songs, some critics felt the supergroup was poking fun at the singer, but Petty insisted the opposite. We weren't trying to mock anybody. Dylan said he wanted to set a song in New Jersey and use references to Bruce Springsteen songs. He meant it as a praise, which I totally believe. I don't think they were mocking Bruce. Tweeter and the Monkey Man, that's what I needed, right? A little Dylan epic storytelling. This is a heck of a song. This is a Dylan song. Through and through, right? Arrangement's fantastic, but he just tells the story of Tweeter and the Monkey Man. It starts out they were hard up for cash. They stayed up all night selling cocaine and hash to an undercover cop who had a sister named Jan. For a reason unexplained, she loved the Monkey Man. Talks about Tweeter was a Boy Scout before she went to Vietnam. And then I'm not going to go into all the Springsteen references. I mean, we got the Jersey Line. We got Highway 99. We got Thunder Road. Crash into Paradise. Ambulance rolled up a state trooper. I mean, all these different things. But so they go on this. They get away from the law. The state trooper finds him. They took his gun away, messed up his mind. They took the undercover cop, which this time I think is a guy, because in verse 2 he's referenced as a guy. He wanted to see him in the can. So, and then they just go on somewhere. They ran out of gas. The undercover cop had cornered him. Jan jumped out of bed. So, like, I don't know, the car's cornered. She jumped out of bed. Someplace they got to go. She took a gun out of the drawer. So I don't know how they go from car. But you just got to roll with it, man. And then the undercover cop was found face down. So, yeah, I mean, it's just really, it's just a fantastic, epic story, right? It's Dylan's epic storytelling at its finest. Now we're to the last song. The only song on here I knew, because I know the video, I don't really know the song. I don't really remember it, but End of the Line, this beautifully bittersweet but still somehow accepting and optimistic farewell tune makes for both an excellent album closer and a highly fitting musical tribute to fallen traveling Wilbury Roy Orbison, especially in the context of the song's official video, which is what we're going to watch, guys, in which Jeff Lynne once again described as follows. George came up with the initial idea for the song. We tried to do something different, have a nice film of us just playing nice shots of guitars and heads stuff. It worked. We played it like Roy was there. We'd all look at the armchair, and there would be Lefty, and it was just his guitar. Or as Harrison himself put it at the time, Roy would have liked us to have continued to do the End of the Line. It's a very optimistic song. We love Roy, and life flows on within you and without you. A little throwback to a song of his. He's around, in his astral body. He'll be cool. All right. End of the Line. I mean, this song was an automatic turn the channel for me when I was 17. Now, I mean, it's fantastic, man. It starts off with Harrison on the chorus. Well, it's all right riding around in the breeze. Well, it's all right if you live the life you please. Well, it's all right doing the best you can. Well, it's all right as long as you lend a hand. He's stating no matter what happens, you can still have a great life, basically. Then Petty comes in. You can sit around and wait for the phone to ring, waiting for someone to tell you everything. Sit around and wonder what tomorrow will bring. Maybe a diamond ring. Then Lynne comes in with the other chorus. It's all right even if they say you're wrong. Sometimes you got to be strong as long as you got somewhere to lay. Every day is Judgment Day. And boy, I wonder if they were saying that more somewhat as musical artists getting criticized all the time. And then Roy comes in, and man, that part of the video is so sad, right? His chair's just there with the guitar and showing his picture, and they make it darker there. So I thought that was really well done. And then, and then Petty's like, don't be ashamed of the car I drive. I'm glad to be here, happy to be alive. It doesn't matter if you're by my side, I'm satisfied. So, and then all the stuff at the end, with Harrison Lynne in there. Even if you're old and gray, you still got something to say. Remember to live and let live. The best you can do is forgive, riding around the breeze. If you live the life you please, even if the sun don't shine, we're going to the end of the line. Like, life is not going to be fantastic all the time. I think we all can relate to that, but it's all right, man. You're still on this earth, and you got to make the best of it. You can find beauty even in the toughest times. So that was a very fitting way to end the album, especially with how it turned out for Roy. But man, that was really good. Before I get to my favorite tracks, Evan David says, right, that's finally it. For what it's worth, my own top 3 for this album in reverse order: Last Night, End of the Line, and Handle with Care, with honorable mentions for Not Alone Anymore and Tweeter and The Monkey Man. I'm gonna have a lot of similar ones. My honorable mention, Handle with Care. My faves are going to be Heading for the Light, Tweeter and The Monkey Man, just epic songwriting. This last song, End of the Line. And my favorite actually is Last Night, the reggae deal on there, and Evan David's third most favorite song here. Now we get to my overall score. It's a difficult album to rate, really, because I mean, there's some weaker tracks on here when you realize they did a song a day. So for me, it's going to be a 7.5. I don't think the point of this is to go, oh man, this is a 10 album, right? And it may be for you, and it may be for Evan David or close, but the idea of all these guys together and just the fun of all of it, it's actually a much more enjoyable listen than what an average 7.5 album would be, even that's a really good score. But 7.5 for me, but just fantastic. I'm glad I finally dove into this thanks to Evan David. So thank you, Evan David, for all the work you put in on this. Guys, let me know your favorite tracks below. And I also got something else I want you to let me know. It's a well-debated thing. Who's your favorite Wilbury? That's a tough question, right? For me, I can get it down like third would be Petty for me. He's honorable mention. Then it comes down to me, a Harrison or Dylan, right? It's not really any wrong answer. If you put a gun to my head, I would say Dylan, but it's very close. But man, just fantastic. I would think Evan David might say Roy Orbison, who's maybe his favorite vocalist of all time, I think. So I don't know, man, but let me know below. I'm just curious what you guys think. But thanks for watching, everybody, and until next time, I will see you.